Good evening. Welcome to another Exosphere Hangout, where we'll be discussing the age gap in high technology. Our guests tonight are Vanessa Restrepo Schild from Kairos Society and Skinner Layne from Exosphere. So, you can ask your questions and we'll go over them if there's something interesting. But for now, Vanessa, tell us a bit about yourself and tell us a bit about Kairos Society, because a lot of people in Exosphere we know we're really interested in the topics that you guys touch on.
Well, I am a scientist. I work in a technique which is called droplet interface. I work making synthetic cells, which is mimicking life and being able to grow things out of just synthetic compounds, the things that make life what it is. And I work with 3D printing of these synthetic cells. I am also an entrepreneur. I have a company named Delphos, and we do social innovation with science and technology, because we believe that if we are able to take science to people, we are going to be able to change the world more fastly. And then I think that my role in the Kairos Society as the president of the Latin American region is being able to connect all of the countries in Latin America and to be able to bring knowledge, science and technology, and to be able to push the world forward.
That is fantastic. Skinner, listening, some people that are watching came from Kairos Society, knowing that we were doing this hangout. And as you hear their mission that they have in Kairos, what would you say are, so you can tell a bit about Exosphere, what would you say are also the touching points in our missions?
Sure. Well, we also believe that entrepreneurship is the way to connect science to the world. And technology is just the commercialization of scientific discovery. But we see in our mission, the focus is to raise up people, to help to empower people first to develop themselves, to develop their self-awareness of what it is that they want to accomplish in their lives and how they have to change themselves in order to pursue those goals, in order to become better entrepreneurs, better innovators. And so the missions of our organizations are very well aligned, and it's been a pleasure to speak with Vanessa and share ideas the last few days here in Chile.
Yeah, so Vanessa came from Medellin to spend a few days with us at Exosphere, and it's been really fascinating to find those touching points. And why, we said the age gap in high technology, and Kairos is represented by people that are, correct me if I'm wrong, under 25.
Exactly.
So all the Kairos fellows are under 25 years old, and they're working with technology on some of the world's biggest problems. So why do you think that is possible nowadays? Why is it possible that for so many young people to be working on such problems with such strength, with such dedication?
First, we need to think, what is the world we live at, and how has it changed in the last years, I believe in the last decade. Before, we had no real access to information. We had books, we had the internet, but we didn't have platforms that allow us to communicate more effectively. So if you see, like 13 years old, 13 years back, we had the beginning of Wikipedia. And if I look at myself in those years, I was in high school, and that changed the whole dynamic of what an education was. Because in school, you had to really copy everything you had in books you read, but nowadays you can just take your phone, open Wikipedia, and know the basic things about the current topics. So the change that it takes into a society is that you don't need to have this huge common culture just by memorizing things. You can access things, and what you can do is to be able to use that information into building new ways of how you see the world. And I think that's the most powerful thing we had. And it's not Wikipedia, it's the whole environment, the whole ecosystem of people believing that if you have access to information in a more effective way, you can really change the world. Because the reason we have language is because of that. Because through language, we are able to evolve in a way that is more effective, is faster, and we can be able to interact and to learn about each person, because we don't only reproduce by the fact that we reproduce by the fact that we speak and we learn from each other.
Right. To me, it's really interesting because Skinner and I talk a lot about youth and the young people and their impact they have now that they have this technology, the access to this technology, the information that Vanessa is talking about. So, Skinner, how does Exosphere see youth and technology playing a role in the world, and how does Exosphere help that this new scenario move forward?
Sure. Well, I think that the internet and modern social platforms that now connect people, not just with information but with each other, the even more powerful element of our operating system, our sort of global social operating system, has given us is the ability for people to discover each other. And because technology and the development of new technological innovations really is not, it is about information, it's about learning that information, but in isolation, it does us very little good. And indeed, we don't live in an age that has more child prodigies than ever before. There were always, statistically, probably about the same percentage. The main difference is that now they are able to be discovered and to discover people to connect with who have different talents and different abilities in order to bring their own abilities into maximal outcomes. And I think that this is the gap that technology has been bridging, but it's created a new gap. And that new gap is the one that perhaps overemphasizes the youth culture and innovation. And I think that now we have a social or cultural problem to solve now that we've solved the technological problem.
Right. So what would you say are what are on each side of that gap? What is it you have in this new gap of sort of fascination with youth? What is the gap what do we have on the side that we need to bridge?
Well, I think one of the gaps is actually created by the over-financialization of technology. The Silicon Valley ethos that really chases youth as almost as an antidote to their problems. And one of the reasons that this happens is that there's a sort of fallacy that because somebody has never failed, they aren't so likely to fail. So rather than try to work with seasoned entrepreneurs that have had a smattering of failures in their career, a lot of venture capitalists, angel investors, and the big accelerators, they would rather pick somebody who's 19 or 20 who's never failed in anything because they've never had the chance to do very much, because it gives a sort of comfort level. That, well, we're starting with a completely clean slate. And so I think that that's one side of the gap. And the other side of the gap is simply that contemporary institutions no longer teach intergenerational communication. So, and this problem has its roots in 19th century primary education. So it all goes back to the Prussian and Dewey systems of education that have been sort of forced on the rest of the world by the U.S. and Prussia, not even a country now, which said that the best way to divide children to learn is by their age. And so we started segregating people based on age from the very earliest years of their life, and never give them a forum for effectively working with people who have different kinds of experience, who are at a different level of maturity. During the corporate era, say from the end of the Second World War until the end of the 1990s, this gap was bridged by the fact that new employees would come into a corporation. They would start at the bottom. They would have bosses who were a couple of levels up, and they would work their way up an organization. But in the startup era, that sort of occupies the popular mythology of the day, you have companies like Facebook where the average age of the employee is 26 years old. So if you're 23, you may come in and have a manager who's 28. And so the level of life experience, it's not just that there's not life experience, but there's actually no awareness of what people with life experience actually do or how they behave. And so I think that's the other side, the dark side of the youth in technology movement that we're witnessing right now. And if we can bridge both sides of that gap, then I think we're onto something that's really, really going to change the way that people operate, they do business, they develop science, etc.
Yeah, I agree. There seems to be a certain fascination with youth. I think it also comes because the media creates the media cannot sell you a story that is 30 years long. The media cannot. You wouldn't find a story that has 30 years of hardships as interesting. The media sells immediate, crazy success. It chooses to frame, the parts that it makes something look. It makes any one of us have the possibility to be a Mark Zuckerberg or a Steve Jobs, and we cannot ignore the amount of crazy coincidences that were happening around those guys, and then we all believe that that's the right way. The right way is to be a billionaire when you're 23 with some sort of new crazy application. So I think a lot of this is, like you say, is ignoring part of the history, and sort of I think we're foolish enough to believe that we really live in some sort of special circumstance throughout history, ignoring that standing on the shoulders of giants was always a necessity. So Vanessa, what do you in Kairos? How do you guys tackle this problem? Because I know there's a lot of mentors and people like that. What is the approach to bridge this gap from Kairos?
Well, to start with, I believe that the digital technologies that are the foundation of the Silicon Valley have ceased to exist as high technology, because we are used to that technology. We do not innovate enough to be able to consider digital technology as a high technology. So to start with that, we need to be able to identify which one of our fellows is really working in high tech. And I believe that the issue that Skinner was talking about, the fact that we see young people as the ones that can do it all because they're fresh, is something that may have something in it that is right, but at the same time is completely wrong. And one really important aspect of that is that it allows us to have a massive amount of young people working on their dreams, which is now the big problem in San Francisco, that is just filled with this herd of crazy young people. But in that sense, when we really move and think about what is high tech, in a sense that imagine 3D printing, we still don't have that issue, because scientists do not believe that young students can do it all. They believe that they can be bright, that they can be really willing to take more risks, but they realize that they need experience. So I think that that's a very important model to take from, because they allow students to jump, to build their own staircase. So it's not a staircase anymore, because they can jump, they can change the way they perceive reality, they can change the way they perceive careers, but they always have someone to learn from. In that sense, you can see, if you ask a young entrepreneur, who do you want to become? And if you ask the normal digital entrepreneur, it may say, I want to be like myself. There's no one that can be like I'm going to be. And you can watch that person 30 years later and realize he's no one, because this feeling that he was better than anyone, that he had no one to learn from, actually was self-destructive.
No role model, no one.
Exactly.
Yes, right.
And we see mentors as the people, we may be different from them, but that mentor is the current state of the art, of the person we want to become. And we really need to learn how that person became that. And we need to adapt because the world changes. So we're not going to follow the same steps that they did, but we're going to learn about those soft skills, those things that we still do not have or have not discovered in ourselves. So I think in this current world we can learn a lot, and we can learn pretty much all hard skills,
right.
But the soft skills are the things that differentiate us. So having mentors is having that person to look up and to learn from, to really know how that person negotiates, really know how that person interacts, really know how that person learns, how that person knows, has that know-how on why is this technology moving forward. What do we need to do to keep ourselves moving, to not be traditional and just stay in the soft waters where things just become chaotic?
Right. It's interesting that we talk with Skinner a lot about this, how there seems to be this false notion that what separates people is just some sort of information or skill or connection or money. That what separates them from where they are to where they want to be, and the reason I think we ignore that what actually separates people from where they are to where they want to be is soft skills is because that is hard to systematize. That requires more embracing how life is a bit more chaotic than that. Life cannot be the sort of things, people's success is not this sort of cup where you just put some recipe and then you have a Mark Zuckerberg. I do wonder if what would have happened in the science world if we would have, I don't think we've had in the science world yet, at least, a Mark Zuckerberg or a Steve Jobs, a guy that made popular and cool to be really successful really early in that world, so that it's like maybe science has saved itself from that glamour, from that pressure to be, everyone should be the greatest scientist in the world by the time they're 20. Hopefully it won't happen. It will happen yet. So the next thing I would like to get into is, it seems that we're talking soft skills, we're talking technology, of course, knowledge. Kairos, from what I'm getting is that people have this need to be from they may have the talent, they may have the access to information, but what they need from there to get to success, it's very different things. And Kairos, what would you say are the things that Kairos does the best to help the entrepreneur, to help the young entrepreneur become successful? What are the real core services and value proposition for their fellows?
Okay, to complement what you said before, actually in science, most great scientists that you can think of made their greatest discoveries when they were under 25. But what got them really recognized was the thing that they developed afterwards, because they were able to mature more as the years went by. But the things that they did when they were under 25 were the foundations of what they became. So in that sense, I believe that we need to understand the difference between science, technology, and business. Because if you see the example of Steve Jobs, if you see the example of Mark Zuckerberg, they weren't creating the knowledge. They were just adapting the technology to fit a need. So currently, what we have is that we've been able to take knowledge from science and to be able to turn that into technology and then take it into a business. So I believe we're not going to have a Mark Zuckerberg or a Steve Jobs in science. We may have a scientist that got the knowledge, then built the technology, and got into business.
Right.
But we're never going to have a pure scientist.
Just because of the time it takes to go from discovery to profitable billionaire.
Or I think it seems that what Vanessa is saying is that people that are pure scientists are just never going to be widely known. There's not a celebrity culture around pure scientists who spend most of their time in the lab. And so the reason we have these sort of success stories is that it's because they ended up as business stories,
yes,
not because they're science stories.
Right, right. And people may relate more to someone that became rich than,
Right.
or may relate more to the romanticization, I think, romanticism of being rich instead of the romanticism of discovering something in the lab, which is probably more fulfilling than being rich. But I think that's what people.
But not only that, we fall in love with products. So we fall in love with our phone. So we believe Steve Jobs got us the phone,
right.
The smartphone, and. When we see Facebook, we all have Facebook, so we see that as a product. So we fall in love with the product, and then we fall in love with the person who came with the idea of the product. So we are still not having scientists that go all the way to be able to track them and say, oh, that person built that product, and that product is changing my life. Because science is not being able to massify itself to be able to accomplish that. And from the perspective of Kairos Society, it's not the normal organization, because we don't go to meetings and talk about entrepreneurship or how to be great entrepreneurs. We talk about our ventures. We talk about what we do and what we can do next. So the people we have in Kairos all have companies, all work in either healthcare, education, or clean tech. So in that sense, we have the person, the fellow, who's really working on pushing the world forward, not just by speaking about pushing the world forward, but actually doing it. And we're being able to connect generations, because we connect the people that are the fellows, our people, with the generation that is our mentors, to the people who are currently the cutting edge in their topics. So in that way, our fellows learn from our mentors. Our mentors are the people who guide all of our processes. And we are able to expand by being able to show that our dreams, this crazy idea that we have about the way we can change the world in so many levels, we are able to accomplish them. And in that sense, we really are able to push the world forward.
Right. Well, Skinner, talking about mentors, you were you were sort of a young star in your realm in politics and correct me if I'm wrong, but would you say that, what kind of role did your mentors play for you in, from being that young potential and being sort of a better, a more, I would say, more adjusted, or whatever the word is. How was that for you, and what would you say is, you see, what would more people, in a very tangible way, what would you say would help more young people as well, considering from your journey?
Well, my experience with mentoring is probably very different from a lot of people's, because I never, at least at the time, never considered myself to have a mentor. But there were a number of old men in my life, friends of the family, or people that I was working with in different projects or capacities that provided a lot of wisdom, and I think that it was effective precisely because I didn't really see it as a sort of mentor-mentee relationship, because we were almost inevitably working together, actually, toward the same goals. So I had in my political work, I worked with people who we were working on the same campaign. In my first startup, one of my business partners was about 20 years older than I was, and what that, or actually more than that, almost 30 years older. So what that gave me was a sense of shared struggle with somebody who actually treated me as a peer, but I was able to work with and learn from their experience precisely because I didn't see it as being talked down to or being told what to do because of their superior experience. And I really think that mentoring now has become this formulaic, systematized process, rather than being about a relationship. It's about advice giving rather than cautioning. And those are very different things. So I really believe that we have to take a proactive approach to reforming mentoring and reforming the idea of mentoring in order not to do young people a disservice, actually. There's a real risk of doing a grave disservice to young people if mentoring is approached the wrong way, because it shouldn't be something that diminishes them. It shouldn't be something that diminishes their perception of their own abilities, because as Vanessa was saying, what we do in those formative years is really laying a foundation for what we do the rest of our lives. And I would say not only in science, but also in business or whatever other vocation one pursues. What we do at the beginning is the foundation for what we do forever. And so if we have, if we don't have mentoring relationships that are based on shared struggle, then they aren't really relationships. They're just sort of a contractual arrangement or something, a quid pro quo of some kind. So you might have a mentor that says, well, I'm doing this because it's my public service. And I don't know that that really leads to great outcomes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when people have the shared struggle, when they have the desire for the same outcome, then what you get is the best of the wisdom and experience rather than the worst.
I agree totally with that, and I would say a key element of, especially in the entrepreneur world, in the young entrepreneur world, a key element missing on the mentoring relationships is the frequency. There seems to be this sort of like, oh, we touch base every now and then, or we email every now and then, and every person, I'm not even gonna use the word mentor. Every person that shaped me and made me who I am was someone I worked with, or someone I was having a very close, a very intense relationship where I was helping as well. I wasn't just getting advice. I was helping. I would provide value to them. It was a mutually beneficial relationship, and this is why I agree with you. And I think this is where a lot of I've been very open about. I hear about a lot of networks that talk about how they provide net mentoring and things like that, and that just becomes a launch once a week or one call every now and then or a couple of emails, or maybe you'll meet in some event or whatever it is. And I don't believe that. That's more like taking a picture of someone instead of actually seeing and being able to shape the person into a better human being in an ongoing process. And this is what I think we care a lot about in Exosphere is frequency. Like you need intensity of the process, intensity of the work over the person. And this leads me to a bigger point, which is what I'm hearing from what Kairos is doing. Kairos in over 50 countries, over around 100, like many countries around the world. Really worldwide organization, has a lot of strength, but at the same time, maybe because of the reach, it's hard to provide that sort of intensity, that sort of frequency, that sort of hand-holding that is so good for the young person, just because of experience. We were talking the other day. There's one can be incredibly wise, incredibly smart, and you can learn a lot of things. But there's some lessons in life that only come with time, impossible to accelerate. Yes. So to get that, sometimes it's hard when the reach is very broad. So what I'm thinking is the real, considering all the needs that an entrepreneur has in today's world, it doesn't seem to me that the right path is, well, I'm going to go to some place that is going to give me all the solutions, but it's more like, depending on what I need. Do I need to connect with a lot of new people? Maybe Kairos is great for that. Do I need to work on my soft skills? Maybe Exosphere is great for that. I have an idea, do I need money? Maybe an incubator is great for that. And I think understanding how these platforms interconnect and how they supply different things in very good ways that's what I think that the entrepreneurs that understand that, I think, are the ones that are going to really accelerate their growth.
Yes, because I believe there is not a formula. We live in a world that believes that everything in life must have a formula. Learning must have a formula, and being an entrepreneur must have a formula. So they try to find common places, and what they lose is everything in between. And actually, everything in between, you cannot put it in a formula. And the issue with that is that if you do the formula, you will never, ever get to the same point of the most influential leaders of today. So in Kairos, something that we like to do is to take those conversations, take those interactions with mentors, and stop that really doing networking, like, hello, my name is this, I do this, what do you do? Ah, that's great, bye. And just having an advice, being like, I don't know what to do with my career, then find what risk are you taking, what are your plans, what are these, and that's it. No, what we do is build relationships with our mentors. We choose real leaders, we choose the people that are the best in their areas, and we connect them with these young entrepreneurs. And our entrepreneurs are not the daily life entrepreneurs, are that people, that person that mentor really wants to know and really knows he can gain from it, and the fellow knows he can gain a great deal out of talking with that mentor. So they both know they're going to win by knowing each other. They both are going to learn, because the mentor is going to learn about all of these new ideas that this fellow has, and the fellow is going to know and learn from the experience that the mentor has. And actually, both the mentor and the fellow will have great innovative ideas by that interaction. And they know each other, not just professionally, but as a person, as a human being. So what we build is friendships. We build those connections, and we allow it to follow the natural course. So we're not like, hey, you had a meeting yesterday. How was it? Do you have results? Can you tick this box and show me if you? Because that will never work. So to summarize, that knowledge is something that you build, and as you build it in life, it's a change. It's something that you will never be able to put in a format.
So Lynn, you talk about, this is great, you talk about formula, you talk about format and these models. I want to talk about education. I want to talk about how these young people should learn. Because the way you learn was the way you educated yourself was very different from most people. And I know that a lot of people have tried to replicate the Vanessa's formula. They try to replicate that in Medellin, and maybe like, how do we do this so we can have more Vanessas? And and you're saying it cannot be a formula. So a question for both of you: how should these young people, this young talent with access to technology, how should they be learning?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll talk about my experience. So from this hangout, you've realized my English is not the best of the world, and I actually stumble myself quite a lot. And the reason of that is that I never learned English by actually taking English classes. So we can see two things. You can actually understand me speaking English, but I don't have the best English. So in education, we now say, we don't need classes. We actually do need classes. If I take classes, I may be speaking better, and I may be a better presenter. But let's take a look at this part, the other part, that is learning by yourself. And I believe that if you really want to learn something, and that's the current issue with education, is that they force you to learn something that you don't know why you need to learn that, or if that is ever going to help you in life. So the things that we learn, and we see like videos all the time on Facebook and on all of these social media of kids just skating and doing awesome things, and we're like, but they never went to school for that. And the reason why is because in high school you don't have a school for skating, so they get the chance to learn about that. And skating is more like a rebellious expression, and if we are able to take that myth, that science, that knowledge is something that you must learn, and no one learns actually, you will get people really interested in saying, oh my God, if I know more about energy, I can make myself, my house sustainable, and I can actually not depend on other circumstances. So if my computer just breaks down and I have no idea how to fix it, maybe if I had learned more about computers, I will be able to just plug some things and make it work. So I think education needs to really focus on personalizing knowledge. And that doesn't happen by just having a teacher and two students, and that's what they call personalized education. No, it's by being able to put the platforms, the information that people need to learn. I often go to lectures, and the professor says the same thing over and over again. So if I repeat the lecture, I will get the same experience over and over again. What if we actually tape those classes and actually do better audiovisual aids for education? And we take those classes, those environments to interact, to actually have more questions and answers, to actually have more debates, to actually learn. Because we don't learn just by staring at a person and just kind of taking it all in and then maybe taking notes because you're not going to be able, and stressing yourself like a crazy person because you see so much information you cannot hold. And actually learning at our personal rate, maybe in our house, maybe in the university, but with a computer, with your phone, and going into a class already having the information and having questions and having all of those problems that you normally face alone. You normally face those problems when you are in your house and you're like, I thought I understand, but I actually have no idea what that class was about, and I actually have no idea what that topic is about. So you have to be like stressing yourself, and you feel your heart going, and like, I'm going to fail at that exam. And if you actually take the environment, that brilliant professor, to have insightful conversation with students, you're really going to change education.
That is really good. Skinner, listening to what Vanessa was saying, sort of some question for you. How should people learn? But also, I want you to mention Exosphere a bit. How does Exosphere tackle this? Because a lot of what she says, I know it's things we agree with on Exosphere. So tell us a bit about that.
Sure. Well, we only can actually, from childhood through adulthood, we only learn something new by taking it apart and putting it back together ourselves. And while that may seem obvious for something like electronic equipment or something else like that, it's also true of conceptual knowledge. In order to really understand the subject matter, even history itself, we have to unpackage it. We have to look at all of the little parts and then try to put them back into place. And so this process is really something that the children do naturally when they are playing. Children recreate relationships in their play games. Children recreate technology using non-technological equipment and tools. Children, when left sort of to their own devices and not given rules-based games, tend to create and recreate the entire panorama of life. So I believe that one of the most destructive things that education has done is to remove play entirely. Not just diminish it. That happened first, but then even in recent years, particularly in the United States, play has been completely removed from the entire equation. So without the opportunity to playfully recreate we've sort of lost the ability to truly learn. And instead, what we have done is we've replaced true learning with language games. So what I mean by this is that a student has not actually learned physics when they pass a physics exam. What they've learned is how to respond in a way that gains the approval of a particular individual. And so they're playing a language game. They're not actually demonstrating mastery of the subject of physics. So until we remove these arbitrary metrics of evaluation, we will not be able to rebuild the play environment. Now, it's interesting etymologically that our word recreation in English is just the noun form of recreate. And so what we ought to be doing during our recreation is, in some sense, learning something and relearning it. And by relearning it, I mean taking it apart again and putting it back together again and gaining some new perspective on that process and the components. So even when I reread a book that I've read time after time, as I'm unpackaging the ideas and then piecing them back together, I gain a new perspective, even on something like The Road Less Traveled, one of the books that we read at Exosphere. I've read the book at least 10 times, and every time it's a new perspective, because I'm not reading it in order to read it, in order to get finished with it and say I read the book, which is the reason most people read books now, is to say that they read it. But to read critically, carefully, and meaningfully, to unpackage concepts, piece them back together, and weave them into our own experience, that to me is what real learning is. And so this is exactly what we do at Exosphere. And so it's no wonder that the second day of our boot camp, the participants went and built sand castles that were representations, abstracted representations of user interfaces of popular technology products. And it was important not to just do a physical representation, but an abstraction, because by abstracting things away, we're unpackaging the assumptions behind so many different things. So one of the groups that was given the assignment of abstracting away the user interface of Google, they built a stand out of 2 mounds of sand and put a piece of wood on it that represented the search bar. And from there, all the way down to the breaches of the water were pieces of seaweed strung together and linking rocks as if it were connecting nodes of information across the web. And the metaphor of it going down into the ocean, out into this vastness, and at eye level, with the search bar, was the horizon. So through this play, what we saw was the abstracted understanding of what Google is at its core. And it undoubtedly inspired many of them who are working on their own technology products now to think beyond just what's a product that I could build that people will pay me money for, or that I could raise venture capital for, but really to make meaning. And so learning is the root of that process. Learning, the ability to recreate what is already known, is a necessary precondition to creating something new.
That is fantastic. Thank you for that. And I will say, I'm going to start wrapping it up, but I want to touch on, Vanessa, when you were learning, when you were 13, 14, doing experiments in your own house, and this is sort of a rhetorical question, but do you feel you were, being taught something, or were you playing? And did you find it meaningful?
I would like to start by this self-learning in my life. When I first got a computer, I think I was about 5 years old. I'm currently 21. And my mom had no idea how to use a computer, but she got us one. And she told me, you can use it. But I had no idea how to use a computer. And she was, that's okay. So I had read the manual, and I had no idea how to read at that time. And she was like, oh, so you plug this, you turn this on like this is a mouse, this moves, and then it moves in the screen, and this is it, take it. So I actually smashed the computer, destroyed it. It was always in the error. She did something crazy, and the computer just crashed.
No more learning for you.
No. Actually, the normal reaction of a parent will be like, I will never, ever give you a computer.
Right.
But actually, my mom got it fixed, and she was like, it's fixed. Go ahead.
Wow.
So I got the chance to destroy things, not by trying to destroy. I was not the mad kid, just like, no. I was actually trying to explore the settings, like the part that had codes, and I had no idea what a code was. And I don't know what I did, but I actually managed to break it many, many times. And actually, some months afterwards, I was very fluent in Paint, and I could draw amazing things in Paint. I got to learn how to use many software in that computer. I don't remember if it was called Word at the time. Let's say it was Word, and I got to be able to insert images and doing things. And I was 5, 6 years old doing something that my mom couldn't do. And she was learning from me. So she was more logical. So she was like, oh, so if it says settings, it may mean this. So she was next to me, and she was like, okay, let's do it together, and learning with each other. And I learned a lot about the things that she could do that I had no idea how to do, and she learned about a lot of the crazy things that I found just by being crazy and just like, if I click here and
Right.
And afterwards, when I was trying to do my first experiments, I was not thinking about actually learning. I was thinking about how I can make this happen. And when I was trying to make this happen, I was like, but I have no idea how to, so I'm going to go and learn maybe what this means. So my first approach was going to Wikipedia. So I was like, I have no idea what a cell is, so let's go and learn what a cell is. And then I have the basics of a cell. That's not good to me because I want to do something very advanced. So what source of information do I have to acquire to be able to know more about what a cell is? And that took me from point to point into being able to read a science or nature paper being an adolescent. And now on, I cannot read every nature or science paper that is ever being published because I do not have the knowledge for that. But I do have specialized knowledge in the area I really like and I want to work in. And I'm curious, so I do not know many things about physics. If I ever come across a question that may have nothing to do with the thing that I'm doing right now, but I really have a question, I will go and find the answer, and I will get obsessed.
Right. So would you say, so curiosity, and I think this is what it ties back to the children, to the kids when they're playing, curiosity as the engine behind real learning. It's wanting to learn and being willing to jump into the play dynamic of learning. I just want to wrap it up with one quick call to action from both of you. Not about Exosphere or Kairos. Of course, people should go to both Exosphere and Kairos. But young people with technology, they have the talent. They have maybe very good ideas. They have the curiosity. What should they do? What is your call to action so that doesn't get either wasted or doesn't sort of, you find a lot of young people to start with a bang, but then it kind of fades out because they don't have the support that we were talking about. So how should these young people with all this talent and ideas and technology should be looking at their growth process? What should they be doing? So quick answer from Vanessa.
I will say find your star, the things that you want to reach. So it can be years from now, the things that you want to reach, but hold to that, and it may change with time. I think that's one of the lessons of the startup view. But persist and resist, and keep doing things to get to that star. It may be very far, you may never get there, but the things that you can accomplish by just trying to get there are more than amazing and much more limitless than anything in life.
You will accomplish more by being overly ambitious than by being conservative.
Exactly.
Yes, I completely agree. Skinner, your call to action to the youth.
The Exosphere logo has a flame on it, and that flame is it serves as a metaphor in many ways. But one of the metaphors of the flame is we talk about quite frequently is finding whatever that is that makes you burn. But I think that in this case, and particularly given the topic of discussion this evening, the call to action would be to think of what starts a fire and what keeps it burning. And I think that young people have the energy, the ideas, and the tenacity to start fires very quickly. But without the old, mature oak trees chopped and put into those flames, they'll fizzle out and it will just be smoke left. And so that old, cured, seasoned hardwood that keeps the fire going year after year are those experienced, mature, seasoned people who have been through the rain, who have resisted the elements, and can provide the stability and the source of support to keep the fire burning when youthful optimism fades away.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Skinner, and thank you, Vanessa, and thanks for everyone that was watching. And we'll do another. We have more hangouts next week, so keep following us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.